Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Frankie J back with another episode of Frankie J Raw, and we have a really great guest on today, Tristan Schnader, and I have a very good story on how I met Tristan, and it's hilarious actually. But real quick before we bring Tristan up to the stage, I just wanted to make an announcement that we have only 2 more shows after this, and then we're ending season 1, and we will be back 3rd week of January to start a whole brand new season with a really great guest, my great friend of mine, longtime friend of mine, very successful podcaster from Syracuse, New York, Tyrone Dixon. So we'll talk a little bit about him at the end of the show. So I want to bring Tristan up now, and we can get the ball rolling here. Tristan, you should be able to bring yourself up to video. If not, I can send you the invite.
Hi, Frankie. I am having trouble. I don't see oh, there we go.
Yep.
Video mode engaged. There it is. All right.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Welcome, Tristan. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. Based on your all the credentials you have, and we'll go over those in a minute. I can't believe you even have time to be honest with you. So how are you today? And welcome.
I'm doing great. And no, the pleasure's mine. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I want to start off. I want to start off by saying this. I've been dying to say this on how we met. I'll just kind of do a quick story. I was doing work. I was playing on an application a couple years ago that Tristan was part of, as far as the back channel and the administration, I guess you could say. And I won a contest. Frankie J won a contest. I've never won anything before in my life, and I happened to win a football jersey. And this sucker just wasn't coming in the mail. It wasn't coming in the mail, and I sent an email that wasn't happy. I sent a semi-frustration style email, and Tristan was the one that happened to field that email, and you ensured that I got my free jersey. So that's how you and I met, and I just think that's really hilarious that now a couple years later we're here and we're talking for the first time in person and verbally. So how cool is that? I mean, not a lot of people can say that when they do an interview show.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know, it's funny. On your end, you waited forever. Like I understand why you were annoyed with it, right? I think you waited up to 3 months for your jersey to arrive. And I think really anecdotally what it shows is just how much being a part of a scramble, a startup is a scramble,
Yeah.
right? You know, there's no one with the job of hooking people up with jerseys when they win like a marketing sweepstakes, right? So the people who were doing it, it was either going to be me, and I was running go to market strategy for the company. I was trying to help the app grow, or the CEO, right? So it's one of those two, and it happened to fall on me. And we were trying to order these jerseys through the NFL shop. It's not like we had an inventory with a warehouse and we could just ship it ourselves. And for some reason, the NFL shop had this fraud detection where if we sent jerseys to people of different addresses, it would delay sending until there was some sort of confirmation. So Actually, you sending that email made me realize that every time I ordered a jersey through the NFL shop, I had to literally call them and say, "This is not fraud. Just send the jersey, please, for God's sakes."
Yeah, here's my secret code.
So yeah, exactly. And I actually remember you got a Dawson Knox jersey, which is a great pick. I mean, I thought that the Bills were gonna make it to the Super Bowl last year, and I actually called it at the beginning of the year last year, and of course I was wrong. My Cincinnati Bengals ended up making it, but um,
Yeah. What's going
but
on with
I
them this
thought it
year?
was. Oh man, we can get into that if you want. I think it's the play calling and the offensive line just has not gelled at all. So I think it's a combination of those two things.
Yeah.
It's been rough.
Yeah, we can get into the football in a minute because I've been frustrated with my Buffalo Bills lately. I almost want to rip the play call sheets out of our offensive coordinator's hands and be like, "What are you doing?" In any event, Tristan, I've been looking at everything that you've accomplished at your young age of
31.
31. Okay, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
44, and I look at this list of accomplishments that you have, and I'm just like I'm dizzy about it. You have you've studied environmental conservation, tropical studies. You got your MBA from Georgetown, McDonough, right? Or McDonough
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the McDonough
School.
School of Business.
Yeah,
Yep.
McDonough School of Business. After school, you what should we call it? You're we're on a team with the app we were just talking about as it's Colorcast as retention, pricing, community growth, things along those lines, and what we just talked about as far as marketing and all that kind of stuff. And then you moved on to bigger and better things. You also have your undergraduate from the College of William and Mary. You have your BA in government and sociology. I studied sociology, a fun subject. And
Really fun.
for fun, and I don't know how the hell you have time to have fun with all this going on at your young. I'm just blown away. You you like to play ultimate, which is for a frisbee game on a pro level, and I have a video of that I'll show in a moment. Talk about that a little bit. For fun, I mean, school is school. I did 3 years of college, and let's face it, the only fun part of college is getting really good cookies at the cafeteria or laying in the lounge and sleeping. So let's leave school out of it. You are definitely super smart, have a lot of degrees and certifications and all that on the side. Talk about the frisbee a little bit. Why frisbee? Why not flag football? Why not anything other? What drew you to the game of ultimate?
Yeah, happy to. Well, first of all, I mean, I'll say this. Uh, I loved school. I've always loved school, and I've enjoyed. I really enjoy learning. I love putting myself into uncomfortable situations, and I don't actually mind being, the least intelligent person in the room. I think that's actually where you learn the most. But happy to talk about Ultimate. What drew me? So first of all, when I played Ultimate, it was before they had professional Ultimate.
Okay.
So I was playing at the college and club level, and club was the highest you could go. And essentially, what ended up happening was I got a season-ending injury, and basically the next year they formed a pro league. Actually, they formed two pro leagues, and since then, one has prevailed in the market, right? So the AUDL exists now as the highest level of Ultimate. Um, what drew me to the sport? There were a couple things. First of all, it's a really intense sport. You can look up Ultimate highlights. I think Frankie's about to play a video here showing what it's about. But you can YouTube highlights from even like the college level tournaments, and the plays that they're producing are incredible. There's a ton of diving, ton of changing direction. It's all about sprinting, but at the same time there's an endurance component because you're never stopping the whole time. Um,
So it's
so
kind of
I
like
really loved
rugby.
that aspect.
So it's sort of like rugby, but for frisbee, because rugby you never stop, right?
Yeah. It's sort of like rugby. in terms of field awareness, it's kind of like soccer and basketball. In terms of the fact that there are end zones, it's kind of like football. Um, and there's a huge technical component with the disc itself. To be able to handle the frisbee is a skill that takes years for people to develop. Um, because when you get the disc, you can't actually move with it. You have to pivot in place, and if you move out of that pivot before you throw the disc, it's a travel, and you have a certain amount of
Oh,
time before you can throw the disc. So you have to be able to throw it this way, which is backhand, right? Like the normal way you'd think. And then you also have to be able to flick the frisbee, which is a forehand. Um, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's almost like, you're serving a pizza pie, right? Your hand is flat when you
huh.
throw forehand. Um, and there are a lot of different ways. And basically, what you have to do is try and throw the disc perfectly so that way it hits the runner in stride. And if you throw a really good throw, you're the person trying to catch the disc um, is actually has to lay out and dive for it. And there's a technique to that too. Um, so
So
it's
if it touches the
incredibly
ground,
intense.
the play is over and the disc
It's
flips
a
back.
turnover.
Okay. Is there
Exactly.
interceptions and things like that? Like if you throw it, it can be
Oh yeah.
intercepted. Okay. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
just
That's
like,
huge. So
wow, it's really cool.
exactly. I mean, if you start with the disc on offense, so it's essentially the same thing as a football kickoff, right? If you receive the disc, your team is on offense, right? So the defense is trying to basically get the disc and score. And if they do that, it's called a break point, and it's a huge deal because it's basically if you have more break points than the other team, then you've won the game, right?
Wow.
So scoring on intercepting the disc and resulting in a defensive score and a defensive point is possibly the most valuable thing you can do for your team. It's the offensive's goal to consistently score, to score every time, and it's the defense's goal to get as many break points as possible.
What's the
And
score?
that's
How many
when
points when
that's
you
when you get
first
a win.
score? Is it 6
You get
points?
1 point. You get 1 point. Yeah, most games are to 15. Although there are different rules around caps. So this is where it'll get complicated. But basically, some tournaments have rules on how far you can go. It's like usually a win by 2, but at a certain time limit, they'll throw on a cap. So it'll be like first to 20, right, or first to 17 when they throw on the cap. But until then, you have to win by 2. But you're playing to 15.
Continuous clock, or is there stoppages, timeouts, things like that?
There's typically a continuous clock. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. When I
You
played
can you
roller
can
hockey,
call
it
you
was
can
like
call
that.
timeouts though.
It's really cool.
You
I
can
mean,
call timeouts.
I've seen it before, here and there throughout the years. I mean, again, I'm 44, and I mean, I've seen a lot of, like a couple of years ago, all my friends were obsessed with, disc golf. And I'm like, disc golf, you throw frisbees and play golf. And every other day, they're just obsessed with it. And I finally got a chance to watch it. And I'm like, I can't believe that this is even a reputable sport. And then this whole pickleball thing, I got to catch up. I saw, what was it, an HBO special, Real Sports, where pickleball is actually people are starting to get aggravated with it because they're taking over all these tennis courts, and for one tennis
Yeah,
court you can build 2 pickleball courts, and it's loud, the
right.
ball, and neighborhoods and communities are actually getting to a point where they're trying to ban pickleball. I'm like, A, I've never heard of pickleball until now, and B, wouldn't you rather the kids be playing pickleball than out doing drugs? So anyways, yeah, this video playing, this is pretty accurate on how it looks. Is it bringing back memories? You want to jump through the screen and play, or
Oh yeah, sure. I wonder if I can make it. Oh, there we go. I can make it bigger. That's cool. Okay, so basically, what you're seeing is the play. Okay, so you've got people in the back. They're called the handlers. They're usually
okay,
the people who are the best at throwing the disc. Right? They're the most technical players. And then you can see that the green team's on offense, right? And they just put up a score, and that was actually a very very fast play. But usually what happens is in front of the handlers, the rest of the team forms what's called a stack. The most common stack is a vertical stack where like literally people are lined up the field. You can see sort of like a vertical line of guys standing in front of the handlers, right?
Okay.
And within that stack, what the team does is they'll call a play where, the guy at the very back of the stack is going to cut, and they're going to cut deep, or they can cut toward the disc, right? If they cut deep, it's obviously a very dangerous play. So most defenses try and set themselves up so that way they're defending against a deep cut. So usually the easiest play is to cut toward the guy with the frisbee, right?
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
that's what you're looking for
Huh.
is you're looking at how the defense is set up, and similar to basketball, similar to actually soccer, or similar to even football to a degree. You're trying the guy on the who's who's playing defense on the handler, the guy with the disc. The defender is trying to force the throw to a certain part of the field.
Okay.
So
So
they're
you're trying to
basically
force
trying to
them to stop
translate.
and make that throw and maybe screw up, right? Is that the goal?
Exactly. So like you're going to force left or force right. So you're going to see here, you've got a throw off, right? So it's essentially the same thing as a kickoff. You've
Okay.
got all the guys lining up. You can see they're lined up in a vertical stack in front of the guy
Yep.
with the disc. So there's the handler. There are two handlers, right? If he can't get the throw off, so you saw that a guy cut inside, right? If he can't get the throw off, he's going to dump it to the other handler, right? So
Okay.
you can see the other handler. Oh, so he just dumped it, right? There was no throw. And you can see that the force is left, right? So the only option is the field on the left side of the field. So like the defense is trying to force them to the left side. So what that's done is it's cut off the entire field right there. If you can get it to the other side of the field, like if you can break that force, it's really valuable because it means that you're going to be able to put it up to anywhere in the field, and it's really hard to play defense on that. So you can see that they're forcing left, but he was able to break there, which is really valuable.
So
It
when you
opens
get
up the entire field.
so you can go backwards, right? If you have to, you can regroup and
Oh yeah,
okay. So if I throw the disc, it obviously with the throw off being the kickoff, I saw it bounce off the ground. So you can do it that way. But as far as when you're in the play form, if it hits the ground, that's an automatic turnover, right?
if it hits the ground, it's an automatic turnover.
Okay.
Now, here's something that's totally unique to this sport, and I thought was absolutely fabulous, and it even works in a professional setting. Um, this is a really competitive sport. Like people take it really, really seriously. In college, I trained four days a week and traveled all over for tournaments, almost
Really?
every weekend in the
Huh.
fall and spring. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
um,
So all over the country.
and
Cool.
all over. Yeah, like I spent my spring break in Florida, like playing frisbee, like not partying.
Hey.
We partied after, but like yeah. So it is intense, but the game operates through what they call the spirit of the game. So you'll notice that there's a guy in orange, and he would be the ref, but he's actually not a ref. He's what's called an observer.
Okay.
So the players make their own calls. If there's a foul, the player calls it.
Sort of like
So
tennis when you play by yourself.
exactly. It's like tennis in that. Well, yeah, if you're playing by yourself, except like in tennis, there's a guy in the chair, right, and they're going to officiate it, and they're gonna observe and basically determine whether or not it's really out. So if there's a contested call, then it goes to the observer, and the observer will call it. But for less competitive games, there's no observer, so it's called the spirit of the game, and basically everyone's held to this like honor code,
Okay.
right?
Huh.
And if you can't come to an agreement, then there's basically there's basically like a default. So it's like, okay, we're gonna set the count back a certain amount of time, and just go from there. And everyone you have 10 seconds to throw the disc.
Okay. Now,
Uh,
obviously, there's a time clock that you can see visually during the game.
no, it's back to the spirit. So as the defender gets into the person with the disc space, they start the count, and they have to call it out loud.
Wow. So this is like basically a sport built on integrity and ethics. Have you run into any games where you're playing people that you absolutely just want to throw elbows at or take their knees out? I mean, has there ever been games? I mean, I played hockey for a long time, and I was
Without
a
a doubt.
guy. If I passed the puck, they all said go to the net because I was the guy that wasn't afraid to have pucks fly at me and be in front of the net waiting for that rebound or tip or whatever. Now, is there times where people get out of hand where it's like we hate these guys and we're going to just crush them?
Yeah, I mean, totally. But really, what it results in is like it just results in people calling more and more and more fouls and just like flustering you even further. So it almost is you kind of have to keep your head. Otherwise, like if you're obviously frustrated and you're kind of going back and forth, then they're just going to reciprocate by being more annoying. And there are teams where like they'll score and they'll spike the disc in a really obnoxious way and like celebrate in your face, and that can get in your head too, and you just really want to beat them. But you know, the game's so exhausting that you don't really have time to throw, fists or elbows or anything like that.
Well,
Like
with the
it's just,
continuous clock, yeah.
well, as soon as
I
there's a score, you get off the field, or if you're gonna, if you're gonna play again, you're toasted because you've just been sprinting for 100 yards.
True. Yeah. It's sort of like when I'm watching an NFL football game and a defense makes an interception, they will run 80 yards down to the camera with half the defense to pose and do pictures. I'm like, that came from the COVID time where there was no fans. So they put that fan camera in and they never took it away. To me, it's like sometimes obnoxious. So I understand what you mean when if somebody slams the disc, it gets obnoxious. So that I understand. But so yeah, that's pretty cool to give people a visual of kind of what ultimate is. So it's called ultimate, which turns out to be ultimate frisbee. So now with the ultimate frisbee, now you live in Washington D.C. You said right in D.C. How close to the hill are you?
Very close. Yeah, I'm
And
maybe a mile and a half from Capitol
why
Hill.
why Washington D.C.? What made you move there?
Well, first of all, I went to school just south of DC in Virginia. I'm originally from Ohio.
And prayers to Virginia right now, by the way. That was awful, that shooting.
Oh yeah, so awful, so awful. And yeah, UVA is sort of a rival school in some ways. It's also a public school. I went to William and Mary, so they're both storied colleges. Thomas Jefferson went to William and Mary, and then he founded UVA. So they're connected in a lot of ways. And yeah, no,
Right.
my heart goes out to what happened there with the football team. It's
It's just sad.
awful.
It's sad. Yeah, it's sad that I mean, I live 2.5 miles from where that mass shooting was in Buffalo. And then what was it last week? About 3 blocks from me. I live in a really weird location. It's actually one of the safest towns in the country, believe it or not. But I live 10 minutes from downtown Buffalo, 30 minutes from Orchard Park where the Bills play. About a mile and a half down the road from the University of Buffalo, where that stabbing just was a few weeks back. And then, so I'm in that like location. And then just last week, there was a shooting where our local police department had to respond. That was literally a few blocks from me where two people were shot. And I'm like, jeepers, like, what is going on? But that's another show. I just think people are angry personally. But so Washington,
Yeah.
D.C. Now, do you have any, do you have plans on staying there or is this just for now? Because it seems like you have a lot going on with all your hobbies and stuff like that. Are you planning
Yeah.
on staying in D.C. or do you have any future goals of moving other places and fulfilling other goals on the bucket list?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been in DC for about 10 years now. I moved up to DC because it's an international city. My interests have been in environmental conservation. There are a lot of international NGOs or non-governmental or nonprofits in DC. So I got a job right out of school. I basically graduated and moved right up to DC. And while all my friends were at Beach Week, I started working and haven't really looked back. I love living in DC. I think it has. I'd say its biggest issue is just how expensive it is. It's an expensive place to live. But I love being here. My partner actually works for the federal government, so
Okay.
in terms of moving, I'm pretty flexible. Things are less flexible for her, so
Well, you're still young, really. I was called
yeah.
still a kid up until I was 40, so you got time. But
Hey
no, that's
man,
really
young at heart. That's all that matters. As long as
oh,
you're young at heart.
I still play PlayStation, so whatever. No, it's really cool. I've always, I know like one person that lives in Washington, and I haven't talked to that person for quite some time, but I was always kind of interested on, if you're not involved with politics, what reason would you have to go there? But obviously, school and other endeavors. So let's talk about a little bit of since you had left Colorcast to move on to bigger and better things. As far as building applications, strategy, marketing, all that. What got you into opening up your own business as far as being a lead consultant in Trioli? What brought that about?
Yeah, so I decided to, well, first of all, I joined Colorcast because one of my very, very close friends, who was a co-founder and the CEO, Evan Kirkham, he started Colorcast. I remember when he came up with the idea, he called me up. I was in business school at the time. And I was like, cool, man, that's a cool idea. We've always exchanged business ideas. We've both always been pretty entrepreneurial. Um, and he got the thing off the ground. He got investors, and he was forming a team. And while I was in business school, he needed somebody to help him get the app onto the market and build the user base. And so that's what I was doing. And it was a sports media app, right? And as you know, it was all audio, and anybody anywhere could commentate with just an iPhone. So that was cool. That was interesting. It had nothing to do with what I was studying, which was sustainable business, and and conservation finance. That's always been my passion. I was managing projects in conservation prior to business school, and so when I joined, it was really just a cool opportunity. I believed in the concept. Eventually, we realized that the company wasn't growing as organically as we had hoped. A lot of
Right.
my work was, we were growing. We had reached 10,000 monthly active users. Things were great, in sort of that way. But what was happening was it wasn't growing organically. All of the people who were joining the app because of the elbow grease my team and I were putting into growing the app. And at a certain point, you have to look at those numbers, and it has to coincide with an organic growth, and you have to see some sort of exponential component to it. And it was completely correlated with how much work we were putting in, how many
So it
hours.
didn't make sense to keep burying yourself in work when organically it wasn't really moving the way you had anticipated. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. And so essentially what was realized was, we need to figure out a different minimum viable product. We need to figure out a different strategy from the product side, and move from there. And betting was sort of the natural pivot for the company, and that's basically what we did was, the company moved into betting. And so that's why you don't really see many people on Colorcast commentating anymore, because the company completely shifted its strategy into building a sports betting product.
So
And
they're
so that's
more
what
or
they are
less
now.
are they going to leave the commentation part of it alone and just kind of let it do what it's going to do and fade off into the sun, or is that something they
That's
can just
pretty much
shut
exactly
down?
what happened. Yeah. So the company rebranded to Outlier,
Yes, I saw the email for that.
outlier.bet. Yeah. And that's what happened. And while that happened, the decision was made to keep Colorcast operating, but not focusing any engineer time or app development time on the app itself. And when you do that to an app, it's going to result in a lot of struggles. When you're starting a company, especially if it's a tech company, you deal with bugs every day, and you depend on your users to report those bugs.
Right.
You need a team in place to make sure that the engineering team is focused on repairing the priority bugs that are quote unquote showstoppers. It's a whole thing, right? And so when you're focused on building an entirely separate app, it means that the other app suffers, right? And
Right. So you
my
got to make a
focus
decision. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And my focus was basically on providing market research on on where I thought the next app, the betting app, needed to go, and that was a lot of work. But there was essentially a realization that this wasn't really for me anymore.
Yeah,
And I think it was a mutual parting in a lot of ways. We weren't selling anything, so there wasn't much need for like for paying the head of go to market strategy to literally not go to market, because we were building an app, right? And on my
right.
end, my passion was not and is not with sports betting. It's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy placing a bet from time to time, it's fun. It's fun to do, but I'm not passionate about the data driven decisions around placing the smart bet and making a ton of money off of betting. That's not where I find the motivation around betting. So um,
Personally, I would be scared because we all know that there's people out there that will bet their house, and I would almost feel self conscious that somebody lost their house based on their bet that they placed with my platform. So I'm not a better either. I used to play the cards, the spreads, and you pick 4 teams, 7 teams, 10 teams, whatever. Those
that's
ones that
totally fun, isn't it?
yeah, I'd play 3 a week, and then I finally got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to win because it's set up for you to lose. I mean, the spreads, the over unders, and I still to this day don't understand who comes up with the spreads. Where do they even come from? That's just my opinion. Is there someone sitting in Vegas in a locked vault with security around him who says, Bills +3? I mean, who comes up with the spreads? So to me, gambling, it's not my thing. I've never
Yeah.
went to a casino except for one time. Went in, spent $200. I was out of there in 10 minutes. So for me, I don't get it, but it's not for everybody. But no,
I could actually tell you, there's the most of the lines that you see come from a company called Sports Radar. It's
okay.
and they provide their API to a lot of sports books, including FanDuel, right?
Oh,
Um,
really? So okay, so they're like the main who do the spreads. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and it's based off of a couple different things. It's a very data driven decision, and it's these spreads, these lines are the more data they have, the better their lines are, in the sense of like today, if the spread is 4.5 points, right? Like the chances of you know the team that has the advantage is going to win by either 4 or 5 points is like really high. They do a really good job of setting the lines, and it's also determined. So it's determined by historical performance, but it's also determined in a series of factors around who's playing, etc. But it's also determined by what people are placing their bets on, right? So as there's more market data coming in and people taking the over, like they might adjust their spreads, their lines based off of where people are betting, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a different world to me. I mean, I've
it's a
never
different
taken
world.
Japanese, so I can't read or understand Japanese. I get
Yeah.
confused. To me, I do my every week for fun. I do my pick'ems just for fun, in my free fantasy league because I used to be in 4 fantasy leagues and this and that, and finally I'm just like, this is like another job. Like this is like a
Mm-hmm.
job and having to set my
Yeah.
lines and bye weeks and running back by committee. I mean, years ago when I did fantasy football, when it was all on paper, I mean, you got to understand, when fantasy in the early days, in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, it was all on paper. There weren't computer systems for that. You bought a magazine and you checked them off as you did the draft, and you had to pay attention. There was no computer telling you when there was a bye week. And then once they stopped, having one solo running back, going to this running back by committee, I started losing interest more and more and more. And finally, 2 years ago, I was just like, I'm not playing any paid fantasy leagues anymore. It seems too crazy. And then the injuries. It's like every other day, someone's getting an ACL tear. I mean, back in the
Yeah.
90s, you never heard of ACL tears. Maybe once in a while, someone blew their knee out on, the turf in Veterans Stadium. But you, everyone's getting ACL tears or this and that. so you can't depend on these players anymore. So fantasy for me lost its juice. But anyways, that's another show to talk about.
I can only handle one fantasy league at a time, and
You get it.
I mean, for me, like what ends up happening, I mean, it's a giant bet, right? You're basically betting on a parlay. You're betting on all
Right.
these things to happen, and you're trying to beat the other guy, right? And when you have two teams, you literally have this enormously stacked parlay where you're betting on two quarterbacks, four wide receivers, two running backs, a tight
Flex.
end, a kicker. Defense is just like there are always conflicts of interest where it's like, oh, I've got Philly's defense and they're playing the Bills, but I also have Josh Allen as my quarterback, and so like, who do I want to do well here, Philly's
You want them
defense or
to
Josh
both
Allen?
do good, but how do you root? And that's
Exactly.
I was going to bring that
Exactly.
point up. It's funny you brought that up because
So it's anxiety provoking if you have more than one team. For me, at least, like I can, if I have Philly's defense and they're playing the Bills, right? Like maybe I'll pick up a different defense, and that's you can adjust that, right? But if you have, I don't know if you know that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and you have Charlie playing around with like there are a bunch of red lines, and he's got this mad look in his face, right? You
I
kind of feel
remember
like
that.
Charlie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just
It's
happened to me Sunday. I have Amari Cooper as one of my receivers.
nice.
And yeah, so they're playing the Bills. So I don't
Yeah.
want Amari Cooper to do good because I want the Bills to win. And it turned out that he had a really explosive day, 2 touchdowns, and we still won. But the anxiety, like you had mentioned earlier, the anxiety of it is like I want him to do really good, but I still want my Bills to win. So
Without a doubt.
so I get that. But let's get to your
Yeah,
company because we're getting close to the end here. Tell everybody a
sure.
little bit about the company that you founded and that you are the lead consultant for Trioli. What's that all about? And just so people know, in the Fortune Cookie Ticker is a website for Tristan's company. If anybody has questions about it after he tells you what it's about.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Check that out. So essentially, what the company is it's a consulting firm. We do what is called impact consulting. Um, with my MBA, I've done a ton of different kinds of consulting. I've done strategic consulting, management consulting, and um, I can really be a jack of all trades, and so that's kind of where consulting fits in really well. What our specialty is in the field of impact. So if you're a company and you want to build out a sustainability strategy, right? We would be really helpful for you in terms of helping you figure out where to start, how to build that, how to take things step by step. At the same time, if you have a basic managerial consulting type need, right, and you're a nonprofit, we're we're set up so that way we can help you with a discount, right? So um, our we'll provide any kind of strategic or management consulting service, but if the project is impact oriented, designed to help the environment or your sustainability strategy, or if your firm or company or organization has an impact related mission, we will provide what we call an impact discount. And
Okay.
so we'll basically cut our rates in order to promote positive impact, right? Otherwise, we'll just serve as a basic consulting firm where we'll provide any kinds of services.
So you're more or less offering that like you really care element to it, which is good.
We really care. We provide a strong personal touch. We have a background in environmental conservation, conservation finance, international development, um, board governance. We've worked with boards of directors. Obviously, I've touched on my startup experience. We have a lot of experience in working with various startups, investor pitches, that kind of stuff. And if you're interested in developing a sustainability strategy or cutting your waste, right? We can help you figure out how that may cut costs as well, right? Or we can help you figure out where to even start. Sometimes consulting companies will show up and they'll basically say, Okay, well, the takeaway here is for you to, um, I don't know, uh, reduce the amount, reduce the products that you're having delivered from California, and maybe you need to get more locally sourced goods in order to build your product, right? Well, that's a really broad strategic recommendation. The thing that we do that sort of sets us apart is we may provide that recommendation, but we'll provide it with, and here's step one, right? Here are a list of companies that you can source from that are local that'll help you cut costs here. Here's a pro forma, and we'll help you take this all the way from step one to your eventual goal of sourcing more locally and driving your costs down and driving your impact down.
Very cool, because there's a lot of people obviously post pandemic that could probably use that assistance, considering everything jumped in price. I'm guessing based on lack of production and sales and everything. So again, that's another show. But we're all out of time here, Tristan. I want to thank you for coming on, and anybody that's interested in speaking with Tristan in terms of the business that he has, it's the website is right in the cookie ticker, trioli.com. And my website is there too, frankiejexperience.com. If anybody has any questions about what you saw today, or you have any questions for Tristan, I can relay them to him as well. Tristan, thanks again. Keep doing what you're doing. It was finally nice meeting you face to face and verbally after a couple of years, and getting my football jersey, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time, and keep kicking ass doing what you're doing. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and we will talk some other time. Maybe we'll have you on again in the near future. But Tristan, thanks everybody out there on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Thanks for listening. And we have 2 more shows left until the break, until season 2. So everybody, thanks for being here. Tristan, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks, Frankie.